Redeemed one, there is something I need you to understand before you take another step forward in your life. The thing you have been dreading, the weight you have been dragging, the conversation you have been rehearsing in your head about whether I still love you after everything that has happened. That weight is not what I want you to carry. What I want to give you instead is the thing you have been most afraid to receive, not because you fear failure, not because you fear hardship, but because deep inside you, there is a place that does not yet believe you are worthy of something this good. And what I want to give you is not just a blessing. What I want to give you is your life back, not a version of your life that requires you to be different than you are right now. Not a life that begins once you have cleaned yourself up or figured yourself out or finally resolved the thing that has been unresolved for so long. Your life back, starting right here, starting right now. In the middle of the mess, in the middle of the uncertainty, in the middle of all the questions that do not yet have answers, you have been living in the aftermath of choices and seasons and wounds that left their marks. Some of those marks were put there by your own hand. Others were carved into you by people who should have loved you better, by circumstances that felt designed to break you, by losses that came without warning and without apology. And somewhere in the accumulation of all those marks, you began to tell yourself a story. The story was quiet at first, almost reasonable, almost kind in its way, because it was trying to protect you from further hope that might lead to further disappointment. It said, "This is just who you are now. This is what you deserve." People like you do not get fresh starts. People who have failed the way you have failed do not get to stand in the light again. That story grew slowly. You did not notice how large it was getting until it began to feel less like a story and more like a fact, less like something you were telling yourself and more like something that had been told to you by reality itself, confirmed by evidence, endorsed by experience. That story is the reason I am speaking to you right now, because that story is a lie. And I will not let that lie continue to shape your life when the truth of who I am and who you are in me is so much larger, so much more real, so much more powerful than any lie your past has constructed around you. Here is the truth that I need you to hear, not as a religious phrase that you file alongside the other encouraging things people have said to you over the years, not as something comfortable to receive in this moment and then leave behind when this moment ends. I need you to hear this as the deepest, most unshakable reality in your entire existence. Here it is. I have not changed my mind about you, not once, not in your worst moment, not in the moment you are most ashamed of, not in the season when you walked away from me and told yourself I would not notice or would not care or had already given up on you and found someone more faithful to invest in. I noticed. I cared. I stayed. I did not stop loving you. Not for a single breath. Not for a single heartbeat. Not in the darkness when you were certain I had gone. Not in the silence when my voice felt completely absent. My love for you is not conditional on your performance, and it is not revoked by your failures. It is not a commodity you earn through right behavior or lose through wrong behavior. It is the foundation under everything. It is underneath you right now, holding you up even when you cannot feel it, even when you do not believe it is there, even when the evidence seems to suggest it was never there at all. The love I have for you is not the kind of love that human beings have for each other. Valuable and real but limited, exhaustible, conditional, capable of running out or walking away. My love is not human love, scaled up to divine proportions. It is categorically different from anything you have experienced in your relationships with people. When someone who loves you reaches the limit of their capacity and cannot continue to give without receiving, that is human love doing what human love does. It has a limit because they have a limit, but there is no limit in me. What I am does not run out. What I give from a supply that does not deplete. And my love for you is one of the things I have been giving without limit, without condition, without the faintest possibility of exhaustion, since before you were born, and extending into every dimension of your existence. Let me be specific about this. My love for you did not begin when you first prayed. It was not activated when you first believed or first came to me or first expressed faith or first did the right thing. My love for you began before your first breath, before the cells that would become you were formed, in the eternal place where I exist outside of time. Before time itself began, I knew you, not a generic version of you. You specifically, your voice, your laugh, the way you think, the particular quality of your longing, the specific texture of your fear, the exact nature of your capacity for love, the precise shape of the wound that has been hardest to heal. I knew all of it, and I loved all of it, even before it existed. Even before there was a you to love. The decision to love you was made before any of the circumstances arose that you think should determine whether you deserve to be loved. This means that everything you have done since then, every failure, every wrong turn, every betrayal of what you knew was right, every moment you chose yourself over what I was asking of you, every time you let someone down, every promise you made and could not keep, every hidden thing you are most ashamed of, none of it entered into a calculation that altered the fundamental decision. The decision was made in a place outside of time, and the things that happen inside of time cannot reach back into that place and change what was decided there. You are loved, you were loved, you will continue to be loved, completely, fully, without reservation, without condition. The father in the ancient story did not love his son less when the son walked away with his inheritance and spent it on things that left him empty and ashamed. The inheritance was squandered, the money was gone. The life the son had tried to build outside of his father's house had collapsed completely, leaving him feeding pigs and thinking about the meals the servants in his father's house were eating. From the son's perspective, the story was over. The love was forfeited. The relationship was broken beyond repair by his own choice and his own behavior. He had taken what his father gave him and destroyed it. He had, in the language of his culture, wished his father dead by asking for his inheritance early. He had said, in effect, "The future you represent for me is less valuable than the money you represent for me right now." He had rejected the relationship in favor of the resources, and then he had taken the resources and squandered those too. By every reasonable accounting, the love should have been finished. By every standard of logic and justice and self-preservation, the father should have been done. But the love did not diminish with the distance. It did not shrink with the shame. It did not expire with the money or the dignity or the relationships or the possibilities that the son had thrown away. The love simply waited. And when the son finally turned around, still rehearsing the speech he was going to give, the careful, calibrated speech about being unworthy of son status and asking instead to be treated as a hired servant, the father saw him from a long way off. The father had been watching the road, not as a punishment, standing there with arms crossed waiting to deliver the verdict. The father had been watching the road because watching the road was what love does when the one it loves is away. And when the shape of the sun became recognizable at a distance, the father did not wait. He ran, and that detail, that he ran, is one I want you to sit with for a long time, because powerful people in ancient cultures did not run. Running was beneath them. Running was undignified. It was the behavior of children and servants, not of men of position and authority. For a man of this father's standing to run, to lift his robes and physically run down a public road towards someone who had publicly humiliated him and wasted what he had provided, was itself an act of profound self-giving. He was willing to look foolish. He was willing to set aside his dignity. He was willing to make a spectacle of himself in front of everyone who was watching, because the sight of his child returning was more important to him than any reputation he could maintain by staying composed and still. That is how I feel when you turn back toward me. Not relief that you finally came around, not vindication that my patience was eventually rewarded, not a dignified nod of acknowledgement. I run. All the distance that opened up between us while you were away, I cover it myself. I do not make you walk the whole way back to me from wherever you ended up. I meet you on the road. I cover your distance. I make up for the gap, and I get to you before you have finished the speech you were preparing. I get to you before you have presented your case for being given servant status. I get to you while you are still holding the carefully constructed argument that you do not deserve son status, and I interrupt it with an embrace that makes the argument irrelevant. The robe they put on him, the ring for his finger, the sandals for his feet, the feast prepared. None of those things were the gestures of someone extending servant status to a person who had demonstrated unworthiness. All of those things were the full, unrestrained, overflowing gestures of someone restoring a son to the position that had always been his, not a reduced position, not a probationary position, not a position contingent on future performance, the full position, son, heir, beloved, fully restored, fully reinstated, as though the departure had never happened. Not because the departure is being denied or minimized, but because the love that was present before the departure is also present after it, and that love is larger than what happened in between. That is the love I have for you, and I am asking you, right now, to receive it, not to think about it, not to evaluate whether you deserve it, not to prepare a reasonable argument for why you should be grateful, but also appropriately humbled. To receive it. Open your hands and receive it. Open the part of your heart that has been closed against it. Closed because receiving it feels too good, and you have learned to be suspicious of things that feel too good. And let it in. All the way in, not just the words of it, the reality of it. Let it go down into the place where the lie about your unworthiness has been living, and let it displace the lie the way light displaces darkness. Not by fighting the lie, not by arguing against the lie, simply by being there, fully present, fully real, and leaving no room for the lie to occupy. Now let me talk to you about forgiveness, because forgiveness is the first doorway into everything else I want to give you. And many people stand just outside that doorway for a long time. Not because they have not heard that they are forgiven, they have heard it. Not because they do not believe in principle that forgiveness is available, they believe it in principle, but they have not walked through the doorway into the actual experience of being forgiven, because walking through that doorway requires them to fully let go of something they have been gripping very tightly. The belief that they should be penalized for what they did. Not penalized by me. They know intellectually that I have forgiven them, but penalized by themselves. Kept in a self-imposed punishment that feels appropriate, feels deserved, feels like the least they can do, given what they have done. I want to say something about that self-imposed punishment that you may not have heard before. It is not humility. It feels like humility. It presents itself as humility, but it is actually a subtle form of pride. Here is why. When I forgive a debt, the debt is gone. When I declare a person clean, they are clean. When I say the record is cleared, the record is cleared. If you come along after I have done all of that and say, I know you cleared the record, but I am going to maintain my own internal record of my failures and continue to punish myself according to that record, you are implying that your record is more accurate than mine, that your judgment of what you deserve is more trustworthy than my judgment of what you deserve, that your assessment of the debt should be maintained alongside my assessment, even though my assessment cancels yours. That is not humility. That is putting your perception above my declaration, and my declaration is the one that governs reality. When I say you are forgiven, you are forgiven. When I say you are clean, you are clean. When I say the debt is paid, the debt is paid. You do not need to add your own payment to mine. You do not need to supplement my grace with your suffering. My work is complete. My forgiveness is complete. And the only thing that the ongoing self-punishment accomplishes is the keeping open of a wound that I have already healed, the maintaining of a scar that I have already addressed, the living inside a cell that I have already unlocked and whose door I am holding open while inviting you to walk out. Walk out. The door is open. The debt is paid. The record is clean. You are not on probation. You are not conditionally reinstated pending further review. You are fully restored. You are fully loved. You are fully forgiven. And the appropriate response to that is not to stand outside the door of forgiveness indefinitely, examining whether you deserve to walk through it. The appropriate response is to walk through it and then to live from the other side of it. To make your decisions from the side of forgiveness rather than from the side of guilt. To relate to me from the position of a beloved child rather than from the position of someone who is perpetually in debt. To approach your life with the energy of someone who has been set free rather than with the exhaustion of someone who is still serving a sentence. Let me speak to what comes after forgiveness, because forgiveness is only the beginning of what I have for you. Some people understand this and still get stuck, not in guilt exactly, but in smallness. They have received forgiveness and they are genuinely grateful for it, but they are living out the gratitude in a small, cautious, apologetic way, as though the forgiven life is a life lived quietly in a corner, not taking up too much space, not asking for too much, not hoping for too much, because even though the debt is paid, it still does not feel right to want big things or expect great things or believe that full flourishing is genuinely available. The gratitude has become its own kind of limitation, forgiven and small, grateful and cautious, healed and still hiding. That is not the life I redeemed you into. Forgiveness was not the destination. Forgiveness was the entry point. The destination is a life of full flourishing, of genuine joy, real abundance, deep purpose, loving relationships, meaningful work, a settled and secure sense of who you are and whose you are that does not collapse when circumstances become difficult. The destination is a life so full and so grounded and so marked by my presence that the people around you can see something in you that they cannot fully explain and that draws them toward the source of it. The destination is not small. It was never small. And receiving forgiveness does not mean accepting a small life as the appropriate punishment. It means accepting the full inheritance of sonship, of daughterhood, of belonging completely to the one who owns everything and has chosen to share it with you. Let me speak to you about restoration. Restoration is a different work from forgiveness. Forgiveness deals with your past, with what happened, with what was owed. with what needed to be cleared. Restoration deals with your present and your future, with what was damaged, with what was lost, with what needs to be rebuilt and recovered and returned to you so that your actual daily life can reflect the truth of who you are in me. Forgiveness happens in a moment. Restoration is a process, and I am in the process of restoring you right now, in ways you can see and in ways you cannot yet see, in the visible dimensions of your life and in the hidden dimensions, in the practical circumstances and in the interior landscape of your heart and mind and soul. What does restoration look like? It looks different in every life, because what was damaged and what was lost is different for every person. For some people, restoration is primarily the restoration of hope, the capacity to believe that good things can happen, which was damaged by repeated disappointment and needs to be carefully rebuilt. For some people, restoration is primarily the restoration of identity, the recovery of a sense of self that was dismantled by years of being told, by others or by themselves, that they were less than they are. For some people, restoration is the restoration of specific things, a relationship that broke, a dream that was abandoned, a capability that was buried under shame and needs to be excavated and brought back into the light. For you, it may be several of these things at once. And I am working on all of them simultaneously. Restoration does not always announce itself. It rarely arrives in a single dramatic moment of visible change. It tends to work slowly, from the inside out, from the deep places toward the surface. A morning when the weight on your chest is slightly lighter than it was the day before. A moment in a conversation when something opens inside you that has been sealed for a long time. A thought that crosses your mind, unexpected and gentle, that says, maybe something can be different. A small but genuine willingness to hope about something you had completely surrendered hope about. Those are restoration. Those are the early signs of deep work that will eventually become visible in your circumstances, your relationships, your sense of self, your capacity to receive and give love. I am working in you right now in ways you cannot fully see or measure. The deepest work I do is always foundational before it is visible. The roots go deep before the tree reaches high. The foundation is complete before the building rises, and the inner healing is thorough before the outer circumstances change. This is not a delay. This is the sequence of how deep and lasting change works. I am not making surface-level adjustments in your life and calling it restoration. I am rebuilding from the ground up, and that kind of rebuilding takes the time it takes. But what is being built will stand. What is being produced in you through this process will last. The growth will be genuine. The healing will be real. The change will not be a performance that collapses under pressure, but a genuine transformation that holds when everything around it shakes. Your pain was not pointless. The hard seasons were not wasted. The things that broke you did not break you beyond repair. They revealed something in you. Not the weakness you think they revealed. They revealed endurance. The kind of endurance that does not come from not feeling pain, but from continuing to move through pain when stopping would have been so much easier. They revealed a capacity for faith that bends but does not break. They revealed love in you that kept reaching even when it kept getting hurt. They revealed a stubbornness toward hope that is, in the deepest sense, the evidence of my hand on your life. Because that stubbornness, that small, persistent flame that refuses to be extinguished no matter how much wind blows against it, that is what I placed in you. That is the part of you that reflects my nature, and it has been working in you through every hard season, keeping you alive in a way that is deeper than physical survival. Your scars do not mark you as someone who could not handle what came. Your scars mark you as someone who handled what came without it, ultimately destroying them. And I do not want you to hide those scars. I do not want you to cover them up or pretend they are not there, or act as though your history is something to be ashamed of, rather than a testimony to be offered. The most broken parts of your story are often the parts that will reach the most broken people. The places where you are most reluctant to be honest about what happened are often the places where your honesty will do the most good. Not because I want you to perform your pain for public consumption, but because the authenticity of a person who has gone through something difficult and come out on the other side with their faith intact is one of the most powerful things in the world, and that is what you are becoming. Someone whose story carries weight, someone whose words carry credibility, someone whose presence carries the fragrance of someone who has been in the depths and has been brought up. I want to speak to the fear that lives underneath your hope, the fear that is always there when hope is present, keeping hope at arm's length, making sure hope does not get too big or too specific or too dependent on outcomes, because if hope gets too big and then comes to nothing, the damage will be worse than if you never hoped at all. That fear is not irrational. It was built from real experiences of hoping for things that did not come. Real experiences of praying for things that were not answered in the way you prayed for them. Real experiences of believing for things that, in the end, did not materialize the way you believed they would. And the mind, being protective, built a system to limit future exposure to that kind of pain. The system says, keep hope small. Keep expectations modest. Keep the distance between what you want and what you allow yourself to believe for wide enough that if the gap is not closed, it will not devastate you. I understand that system, but I want to invite you to dismantle it, not recklessly, not by ignoring the legitimate lessons your experiences have taught you, but by recognizing that the system was built to protect you from pain and instead has been keeping you from fullness. Because the fullness I have for you cannot be received by a heart that has been trained to stay in protective smallness. It can only be received by a heart that has been opened, not naively, not without wisdom, but genuinely opened. And opening your heart requires a degree of courage, the courage to want things again, the courage to hope for things again, the courage to believe that the God who has been with you through everything you have been through is also working on your behalf towards something that you cannot yet see. I am asking for that courage from you, not all at once, not a dramatic, immediate dismantling of every protective wall you have built, but a beginning, a small opening, a willingness to say, I am going to allow myself to hope for this one thing. I am going to carry this one expectation without immediately suppressing it. I am going to let myself want this without immediately preparing for the disappointment of not getting it. That beginning is enough. I can work with that. Start there. Open that small door. And watch what I do with the space you make. Let me talk to you about your purpose, your specific, individual, irreplaceable purpose, the thing you are here to do and to be that no one else in the history of the world has ever been positioned to do and to be in exactly the way you are positioned to do it. Every life I create is a stone dropped into water. The stone does not see the ripples it creates. The stone only experiences the impact of entering the water, but the ripples go out, further than the stone can see, further than the stone will ever know on this side of eternity. You have created ripples in the lives of people you do not even know about. Words you spoke, kindness you showed, presence you offered, courage you demonstrated in hard moments. Those things have rippled out into the lives of people who were watching, even when you did not know you were being watched. Those ripples are still moving, and the ripples ahead of you are not fewer or smaller than the ones behind you. The work ahead is not smaller than the work behind. If anything, the work ahead is larger because the person who does it is more refined, more seasoned, more capable than the person who did the earlier work. The hard seasons you have been through have not diminished your capacity for impact. They have increased it, because capacity for genuine compassion comes from having experienced genuine suffering. Capacity to reach people in pain comes from having been in pain and having found what actually helps and what does not. Capacity to speak with authority about the faithfulness of someone who carries you through darkness comes from having been in darkness and having been carried. You are not used up. You are not past your prime. You are not at the end of what you have to offer the world. You are approaching a season of increased fruitfulness that requires the depth of character that only these hard seasons could have produced, and I intend to use you. Not in spite of what you have been through, but through what you have been through. The very things you are most reluctant to talk about are often the things that will give your voice the most power in the lives of others. Because the people who need what you have to offer are not looking for someone who has never struggled. They are looking for someone who has struggled and has something real to say about how to survive it and what is on the other side of it. I want to speak to the relationships in your life, because relationships are where so much of what I want to restore in you will be restored, and they are also where some of the deepest damage was done. The people who were supposed to love you and did not do it well. The people who were supposed to be safe and turned out to be dangerous. The people who made promises and did not keep them. The people who left when staying was what you needed. Those experiences have shaped how you relate now. They've installed a set of protective protocols, the cautious assessment, the slow trust, the held-back piece of yourself that never quite makes it all the way into any relationship because making it all the way in feels too risky. Those protocols made sense. They were adaptive responses to real experiences, but they are not permanent requirements. They are not the final word on how your relational life will look. I am healing your capacity for trust. Slowly, carefully, in the way that genuine healing works, not by forcing open what has been closed, but by creating the conditions in which what has been closed can gradually, safely open. I am bringing people into your life who are capable of holding what you offer them. I am cultivating in you a discernment that helps you distinguish between those who are safe to open up to and those who are not. I am not asking you to abandon the wisdom your experiences have given you, but I am asking you to let that wisdom be wisdom rather than a prison. Wisdom says, be careful about who you trust. It does not say, trust no one ever again. Trust again, carefully, at the pace that feels genuinely safe rather than the pace that feels necessary for protection. And watch what I do in the relationships that are available to you when you begin to open up. I am not finished with your relational life. The connections that are still ahead of you will surprise you with their quality, with the ease of them, with how much you will feel genuinely known and genuinely valued, without having to perform or present a version of yourself that is more acceptable than the real you. There are people in your future who will see you, the real you, including the complicated parts and the imperfect parts and the still in process parts, and will choose to love what they see. Not in spite of all of it, but because of all of it, because the totality of who you are is genuinely lovable, including the parts that have not yet been fully healed. Those connections are real. They are in your future, and I am preparing both you and them for the moment when they arrive. There is one more thing I want to say to you before I close, and it is this. I see the weariness, not just the spiritual weariness. The physical and emotional exhaustion that comes from trying to carry too much for too long while not being entirely sure whether any of it is working. The kind of tired that a night's sleep does not fix. The kind of depleted that goes down to the bone, to the place where you are not sure what you have left to give because you have been giving from reserves for longer than you can track. I see that weariness. I am not asking you to manufacture energy you do not have. I am not asking you to perform a vitality that does not match your current experience. What I am asking is this: let me carry some of what you are carrying. Let the burden be shared. Let the weight distribute between your shoulders and mine. You were never designed to carry all of this by yourself. The carrying was never meant to be entirely yours. Come to me with the weight, and let me take the portion that belongs to me and leave you with only what is actually yours to carry. When you do that, something happens. Not always immediately, not always dramatically, but something shifts. The weight that felt crushing becomes bearable. The path that felt impossible becomes possible, one step at a time. The future that felt like an unclimbable wall begins to look like a series of steps that can be climbed, not because the circumstances changed, but because you are no longer climbing alone. You are climbing with one who has already been to the top and back down and who knows every step of the way. That is what I offer you, not the removal of the climb, the company for the climb, the strength for the climb, the wisdom for each step of the climb, and the guarantee that the top exists and that you will reach it. You are my redeemed child. You belong to me. That is not a religious formula. It is the deepest reality of your existence. And because you belong to me, everything that is mine is available to you. My strength for your weakness, my clarity for your confusion, my peace for your anxiety, my wisdom for your uncertainty, my joy for your sorrow, my presence for your loneliness. All of it, at all times, in all circumstances, without exception and without condition. That is your life. That is what I paid everything to give you. And I am giving it to you right now, fully, freely, with joy, with the same joy that made the Father run down the road, with the same joy that clothed the Son and put the ring on his finger and called for the feast. That joy is real, and it is pointed at you. Come home. You are already here. You are already seen. You are already loved. Now let that truth go all the way down into the deepest parts of you and take up permanent residence there. Let it root. Let it grow. Let it change the way you see yourself, the way you treat yourself, the way you approach each day. Let it make you kinder to yourself in the hard moments. Let it make you more patient with your own process. Let it make you more generous, more open, more willing to receive the good things I keep putting in your path. Let it make you someone who has finally stopped running from the love that has been chasing them and has turned around to accept it fully, completely, and without reservation. That is the life I am offering you. Not a life without difficulty, not a life without challenge, but a life that is profoundly, fundamentally, unshakably held. A life where no matter what comes, you know where you stand. You stand in my love. You stand under my care. You stand in a belonging that is older than your name and stronger than anything that has ever tried to take you down. That is your life. That is your inheritance. That is what I paid everything to give you. And I am giving it to you now, freely, completely, with joy. Let me speak now to the part of you that has almost stopped wanting things. The part that has learned, through repeated cycles of wanting and not receiving, that wanting itself is dangerous. That desire is the thing that makes disappointment possible, and if desire is reduced far enough, the disappointment has nothing to attach to. You learned this the hard way. You wanted things, and they didn't come. You asked for things, and the answer was not yes. You believed for things, and the believing did not produce the thing you believed for, at least not in the form or the timeline you needed it in. And so the self-protective mind made a calculation. If you do not want things too specifically, if you do not hope for things too concretely, if you do not let desire become too vivid and too particular, then when the thing does not come, the impact is manageable. The grief is contained. The disappointment has less surface